Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/TMHP and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title for free and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audibletrial.com/TMHP.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Dez, the producer of the Morning Huddle podcast, back at you with another uplifting and inspiring episode. Now, today, me and Eric sit down with our good friend Dacari Middlebrooks, and we talk all about his journey through depression. And I promise you all, this is a deep one. So you already know what to do. Hold on, listen up real good, because this is an episode you don't want to miss.
Good morning. It's time for your Morning Huddle, where we address how situations impact your mental health. In each episode, we take a deep dive into mental health issues by looking at ways to cope with mental illness and ways to break mental health stigmas. We talk about everything from emotional abuse to physical abuse and how to get help when you need it. There's no need to suffer in silence because Eric is here to coach you to better mental health. Here's your host, Eric the Counselor.
And welcome to today's edition of the Morning Huddle podcast with Eric the Counselor. And as always, we have an awesome show lined up for you guys today. It's going to be a topic that I know each and every one of you listening to will be able to relate to, and that topic is depression. So today in the huddle, we have my man Dacari Middlebrooks, who is the author of the new book, The Depressed Millennial. And we're going to dive deep into this topic and have a candid discussion about depression. So, Dacari, welcome to the show. Welcome to the huddle. Introduce yourself to the listeners. Let them know a little bit about who you are, and then we'll go on with the show.
Well, I'm Dacari Middlebrooks from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. That's my city. I am a diehard Falcons fan. I am still suffering from that Super Bowl loss about 2 years ago. And so I'm still hurt.
You still hurt? I was going to say, what's their record looking like this year? What's their record looking like this year?
Trash.
Yeah, we
I was
are.
going to say, I don't know.
Say it like that.
Yeah, we're 3-4 right
y'all
now.
won did y'all win your last game?
Yeah, we won our last game.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Let's
Okay.
not do it. We are going to D.C. this weekend to play the Redskins.
Oh, yeah, that's probably going to be an air because they're doing their thing
Well,
this
they're
year.
playing pretty good, but I think we'll beat them.
Okay.
We'll come back and talk about that
Confidence,
later.
that confidence.
But I do believe
see
that
it.
Super Bowl loss contributed to parts of my depression.
Oh,
As a matter of fact, the
man.
day after that Super Bowl, I did not get out of the bed.
Man.
My son made it to school at about 11 o'clock. and
Oh,
on Channel
boy, it
5
was
later
that
that day,
bad.
later that day, Channel 5 had they did a report about schools, and I think it was about one school had about 70% tardy, like a tardy rate.
Everybody was
And
late.
their excuses were no lie. They had the list. They had Falcons.
Wow.
Falcons. Like everybody, we were sick. The city was sick. So from Atlanta, went to Morehouse College there, graduated with a mass communications degree, and I came up to Vanderbilt Divinity School to study and learn more about God and what I want to do. I had a passion to bridge media and ministry, and so I'm still working through that. So I have a son, and we'll get more into that as we talk.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's a pleasure to have you today. And like we said, we're going to be talking about depression. But before we get into that, as always, we want to invite you guys to follow me on Instagram at Eric_the Counselor. That's where you can connect with me, where I always say this, I spend most of my time answering questions and just having a conversation about mental health. So if you want to get in contact with me, be sure to hit me up on Instagram at Eric_the Counselor. Now, if you are looking for a mental health speaker, I love to come to your job or wherever you are to talk to your people about mental health. And it's more than just talking. Like, I'm bringing an experience. My whole mission is to help people experience mental health right then and there. I'm not just a talking head. I'm coming in there and I'm bringing the experience to you. So you're right then and there, you will get the benefits of, having a mental health therapist. You'll have it right there in your seat wherever you are, and I'm passionate about that. I'm not chasing money. It's just a passion that I am, committed to getting out here and sharing mental health with people who wouldn't necessarily, go out and seek mental health. And so that's what I'm here for, to come out there and break it down in a way that people can relate to. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not afraid to say it. Me being a black male therapist, that's my superpower.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I know as soon as people see me, they feel that guard is starting to come down because, I'm not an old white guy or I'm not an old white woman. And I've heard this in my practice. I've had older white women bring their sons to me and say, I didn't want my son to talk to an old white guy.
Wow.
And so they brought him, and I'm like, well, I'm about as far away from an old white guy as you can get, And so, I respect that, and I know that's something that's going to help people break down their barriers. So if you're looking for a speaker, that can relate to your audience, I love to be out there, and you can book me at ericthecounselor.com. You can also go there to learn about a new service that I'm offering. It's called remote coaching, and this is for people who wouldn't or may not necessarily need long-term therapy, but maybe you're dealing with a situation, you need some clarity, you need someone to kind of process some things with. Well, I'm available to do that for you as well, and you can go to my site, ericthecounselor.com, and we can get you signed up for that as well. Dez, so how you feeling, man?
Hey, feeling great. I was finna say, I thought you had more to the list over there. I was like, Eric is doing it all today.
Hey, man,
doing it all. That's awesome though. As being a black man, being a counselor, and having so many different, avenues of where you're spreading yourself to everybody and to others to ultimately spread your message and help people.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's really all about. But to answer your question, I'm doing great. I'm feeling good.
The last show we did. My wife was talking about, how you were talking about the issue of cleaning up the bathroom.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, Dez, just clean up the bathroom. Save yourself the hassle and just clean up the bathroom. She wanted me to tell you that.
Okay.
So
thank you, Tiffany.
Keep the bathroom clean so you can have a happy household. All right?
Gotcha.
So look, let's get right into today's discussion. We're going to be talking about depression, and before we invite Dacari to tell us his story, I want to lay the groundwork because I know my audience and really just people in general, when we throw out these words depression, they're like, what does that really mean? And so I want to break that down for us today. I'm going to start off by talking about the symptoms of depression. And here's the thing you need to know about what I'm about to tell you. You might feel any number of these. You might only feel one of these. But just because you feel sad or just because you're having a difficult time sleeping, that does not necessarily mean that you're going to be diagnosed with a depressive disorder. You just might be having a depressive episode. Maybe you had a breakup. You're going to be sad, right? Maybe you got into an argument with your mom, failed a test. It's normal for you to be sad. But if your depression is interfering with your daily functioning, now that's when we're starting to look at it a little deeper, and you may be meeting the qualifications for a depressive diagnosis. But here are some of the common symptoms that many of you, I want you to listen to these, and I really want you to think, am I feeling any of these, or have I ever felt any of these, just so that you can get an understanding of what it feels like and connect to it as we're talking about it today. So this show really truly is for the listeners today, because depression and anxiety are the number one and number two most diagnosed disorders that we give out. Depression-related disorders or some type of anxiety-related disorders. So listen to these symptoms. The first one is a loss of interest or pleasure in the things that you would normally do, right? You no longer have any interest to go hang out with your friends. You no longer have any interest to go to basketball practice or go hoop or whatever it is that you would normally do. If you have lost interest or pleasure in the things that you would normally do, that's a symptom of depression, all right? Here's one that most people probably can relate to if they've ever had any type of significant depression. You will experience a significant weight change. You might notice yourself losing 5-10 pounds. I remember I had a depressive episode earlier this summer, and I literally lost 20 pounds. Look how small I am.
I said, what about gaining though? Like,
well, you might gain weight if one of your coping skills is to eat.
Oh,
yeah, you might find yourself gaining weight also, right? So here's another one: feelings of worthlessness. You feel worthless. You feel like no one cares about you. You feel like no one loves you. Maybe nobody's calling you to check on you. So you start to feel like, am I worthy? I'm feeling all these other symptoms, and that leads to a feeling of worthlessness, all right? So that's another symptom. Here's another one: sleep difficulty. Maybe you're having a tough time getting good rest at night because your mind is just racing. You're having these ruminating thoughts that just won't seem to stop, and so it's interfering with your sleep pattern. So that's another symptom. Let's see. Thoughts of death. Recurring thoughts of death. Now, I want to talk about the recurring thoughts of death. I want to be very sensitive when I talk about this. When you have a depressed episode, you might start to think about death meaning, life would be easier if I wasn't around, those types of things. But if you are thinking about killing yourself, that's a different type of thing. That's what we know as suicide ideation. So, and I wanted to delineate the difference between the two. A thought of death because you're sad and you just, you want to escape the pain, the physical pain that you feel from depression. So you want to escape that, and sometimes you think, man, if I wasn't here, things would be better, right? But then you have suicide ideation when you're actively thinking about taking your own life. And so those two things are different. Another symptom is diminished concentration. You find it hard to concentrate on normal things. Maybe if you're a student in school, you can't focus on anything in class. Or even if you're a professional at your job, you find it hard to focus on your job, and it's because you have these depressive symptoms. Now, these are some of the symptoms, all right? And Dacari, when you tell your story, we want you to share with us your symptoms, the things that you experienced. Now, here's two other things, and then we're going to get into Dacari's story. So when you think about who's affected by anxiety and depression, 95% of Americans are struggling with some form of anxiety or depression. That's pretty much all of us. And if you think about what's going on in society, we live in an anxiety and depressive society right now. Yep. You just think about what's going on in the world. It can cause and trigger these emotions. But let me tell you this. Now, I know, Dez, half of our audience is women. We know that. Yeah. 48 to 50% of our audience, the people listening now, are women. But guess what, women? You are 2 times more likely to develop depression than men, right? How about this? About 1 in 10 people will experience depression in their lifetime. 1 in 10. Right? So it's almost, you can't really escape this, exactly. Right? Most people experience their first depressive episode between the ages of 20 and 30. Now, again, that doesn't mean that if you're not in that window of ages that you haven't experienced depression. But when we look at the data, it tells us that most people will experience their first depressive episode between the ages of 20 and 30. Now, sidebar, we also know that young people experience depression and anxiety also. We know this for a fact. But the reason it's difficult for us to diagnose it is because young people can't tell us, hey, I feel depressed. I mean, like a 5-year-old will not come up to you and say, hey, I just feel depressed today. Their depression might show up with behavioral issues because they don't know how to control how they feel. So that's something that we need to know. Now, here's some risk for depression. Now, a mental health disorder is part nature and part nurture. And what I mean by that, nature is genetics. If you're father or mother or someone struggled with depression, bipolar depression, any of the types of depression, and I'll talk about some of those later, then you are at a higher risk of developing it as well. If the nature, also meaning the environment, is conducive to the depressive triggers. So if you had a parent, a grandparent, anybody, really not anybody, but if you had someone in your direct lineage that suffered from depression, then you are at a higher risk of developing it, especially if you are in an environment that triggers depression. So keep that in mind. Here's some other things that cause for risk for depression: poverty, unemployment, social isolation, and just life, everyday life, could cause you to go into a depressive state. And also regular use of drugs and alcohol can trigger depression.
It's time for a mental health timeout. Some of you already know that there are different types of depressions. One in particular that I didn't know of is postpartum depression, which takes place after childbirth. Some refer to it as the baby blues. Most commonly, women suffer from this, but did you know that postpartum depression can affect men too? If you don't believe me, just hit up Eric. You know he just had a baby, and I heard that he may have dealt with a little postpartum depression. Go ahead, hit him up, send him a message on Instagram and ask him all about it. You can find him at Eric_the counselor. Now, back to the show.
What I've just done was just laid the groundwork for this conversation that we're going to have. And now, Dacari, if you could, just, explain to us, what made you write the book, number one. Well, that's number two. Tell us about your struggles with depression, and then tell us about how, your book came about.
Okay, I'll start. So if I can take your listeners on a journey with me.
Let's do it. Come on, I'm ready for the ride. Strap
so
in.
Here it is. It's the year 2005. And I'm in Morehouse Gym. I'm at the gym, and I look down at my phone, and I'm about to tell my age. look down at my phone, and it say chirp.
Chirp.
Chirp. And
Like a Blackberry?
No, chirp.
Man,
Oh,
nah.
like a chirp.
Chirp.
What is
Next
that?
tail.
Next
Oh, the
tail.
next
That's
tail.
it.
Oh, the next tail chirp. I'm
Chirp.
tripping.
Chirp.
Yeah, I got you.
Hit me on my next tail. Chirp.
I had one of those big black phones. I had one.
You're around my age.
I had that phone. I did.
Go on.
I literally had that phone.
So I get this chirp, and it goes off once, and on the line is my best friend.
Mhm.
I said, "Look, dude, I am playing basketball. Call me back." He chirps me again. It ended up being about 7 or 8 times. Like, this dude has been getting on my nerves all day. And hang up, and I tell him, "Hey, we're going to the skating rink on Sunday. I'll see you then." This was like Saturday. "I'll see you tomorrow." Well, Sunday rolls around, and I'm sitting there, I'm saying, I'm tired. I go to my grandparents' house, and my little cousin, she just had a baby, and I wanted to play with the baby. So I decided, you know what? I didn't even call my best friend. I called his little brother. I said, "Hey, I'm not going to come to the skating rink tonight. I'll just see you all, Monday or Tuesday of this week." Cool. Monday rolls around, and I get another chirp, right? And it's from my ex-girlfriend.
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Oh, man, what does she want? What does she want?" Right? She says, "Hey, did you hear what happened last night?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Well, no, what?" She said, Manon, that's his name, we called him Man. Manon was shot last night.
Mm.
I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "He was shot." I said, "Okay, that's weird. No one's called me." She says, so I say, "Hey, what happened? Is he okay?" She says, "No, they're saying he didn't make it."
Mm.
So immediately I run outside, and I'm like, I need to call somebody. I'm like, I'm not sure if this is true, because someone would have called me by now.
Right.
I go outside, and I begin to check my voice messages. The first one was from his mother. She said, "Hey, give me a call back. I need to tell you something about Man."
Wow.
The second one was from another friend of ours. She said, "Please tell me what I'm hearing is not true." And the third one was from another friend who told me, "Hey, I need my friend's, his girlfriend's phone number.
Mhm.
Can you give it to me? I need to call her." And I didn't check the rest. I called Miss Freeman, and I said, "Miss Freeman," the first thing I said, "please tell me what I'm hearing is not true."
Mhm.
She said, "It's true." And I remember fainting. I remember I just lost it. And I remember being picked up by some neighboring business owners that were right next door. And I remember being extremely just disappointed. And so I went through this period from 2005 to 2008. I began to have nightmares about his death. Every day, 3 out of the 5, well, I'm going to say 5 days. 3 out of the 7 days, here I am. I'm waking up in sweats thinking that I'm going to die just like him. What happened? They followed him home. They wanted the rims off his vehicle.
Wow.
They shot him with an AK-47. I remember at his trial in 2008. They showed a picture of his body, and I remember seeing his eye right above his forehead. One shot. And I'm sitting here saying, what's going on? Like, my life, my world had changed. I became I became very nonchalant. I'm 21 years old. I'm saying, obviously, and now I'm wrestling with faith. Obviously, God really doesn't care about young people.
Mhm.
Like, now I know people, if you're in gangs at a young age, the things that can happen, you're in drugs and all those different things, this can happen. But for someone who won best all around in high school, everybody loved him. And he's dead. So I come up here to Vanderbilt, and I tell my professor, and I say, I'm struggling still. And she says, for 3 years, you haven't been to counseling?
Mhm.
My first response, black folks don't go to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
We just pray about it. But I realized I had been to every altar call. I had sat in every prayer line, got on every prayer call.
Mhm.
I had hands laid on me. Like, I've been to every Pentecostal church to try to get healed, right? And it wasn't happening. And so I began to go through therapy, and it started working. What's crazy, though, I'm in counseling, dealing with the loss of my best friend, but I remember one cold December day in 2007, That's actually when I started in 2007. But in 2007,
When you started counseling?
that's when I started counseling in
Okay.
2007.
Yeah.
But I still had those nightmares up until 2008. But in 2007, I'm going through counseling. And I remember in December, I walk in and my counselor said, "What do you want to talk about today?" My first words were, "My grandfather's probably going to die." She says, "Huh?" I said, "He's battling with cancer and he's probably going to die." She says, "He's very important to you." I said, "Yes, this is the only father I've known." And I'm wrestling with that. And I started wrestling again with faith. The people that I love the most are being taken from me. So how do you wrap your minds? I can continue to go to counseling and I can work through it and talk through it. And so what I did, I sped up my life. I got engaged. I got married, right? Bought a house, got a new job. And this is where we are in the story. Fast forward. I go to counseling all the way till I graduate from Vanderbilt in 2011. Life is well. But 2014, that's when life started over for me again.
What do you mean? Tell us. What do you mean when you say life started over for you?
I was hired in 2010 to work as a personal assistant, first assistant to my pastor here in Nashville. And I traveled the country. But here I am. I'm a millennial. Go to school, get a good education, come out, get a good job.
Right.
Well, it was a good job. But I had student loans, and the salary wasn't complimentary to the student loans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Is there a salary complimentary to student loans these days?
Not really.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking there's going to be advancement in the company. And so for 3 years, I was like, will there be a raise? Will I see increase? Because I'm now working in an environment, to be honest with you, if you know anything about church, a lot of the people that work for ministries, they are just loyal, right? And so they were hired based on loyalty. Like, you've been there for a long time, we're going to make you the CFO.
Yeah.
These people never went to school for finance. You know, you've been here a long time, we're going to make you the assistant pastor because you can preach a little bit, but don't have any business structure. I'm saying, I went to school for this, and I'm subjected to that. So that leadership made me question my value. So not only was I not being compensated, in my opinion, fairly, I also felt like I wasn't bringing enough value to the company based on how I was treated in the company. So in 2014, I told my wife, I said, "Listen, apply for that job at Emory. I am sick of the church. I don't want to be a part of it. Forget them. I will make it without them." What I didn't know, you talk about the job market. Once you work in the nonprofit sector and you try to go into the for-profit world, they want to know, what have you done in this space? You work with churches. What you mean you want to work for Chick-fil-A? What you mean you want to work for a big corporation? We don't know if you can do the work. I'm like, no, I'm qualified. I'm skilled. You see what I've done? Yeah, but that's for the church. So I applied to over 30 places. Didn't get a job offer. And my pastor, being so gracious, kept me on and allowed me to be a transit employee. But when I got to Atlanta, being a transit employee, I was supposed to work for another organization in Atlanta through my pastor, and they shunned me too. I talk about it in my book. I became a threat to people because they felt that my presence would decrease their relevance. It's the young versus old thing, right? Like, they literally start shunning me out of meetings. And I remember one day I came to the office in Atlanta and my name was off the door. Like, pettiness like that. I'm down there. I'm supposed to be helping you out with marketing and doing strategy. And all of a sudden, you all come back with a plan and say, "What do you think about it?" Well, I was supposed to be at the table. "Oh, we didn't need you." I remember one person said, "Why are you here?"
Wow.
So I'm wrestling with that. I'm wrestling with that with the new organization, and on this side, at the church, they're trying to figure out why Bishop's keeping me around. Who else can go travel between two spaces? And so I remember people backdooring me. They hired 2 people to replace me.
Wow.
And then once they realized they couldn't do the work, they had to keep me. So I'm wrestling with that. That eventually brought me to this place where I was drained. I remember December 26, 2014, I got an email from the church that said, "Your last paycheck will be December 26th. So it wasn't December 26th. It was maybe in October. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do? And I remember my wife coming home December 17th, telling me that we were expecting our first child.
Oh, man.
So now I'm in a space where, and I remember her saying, the church doesn't respect you. They're not going to do it right by you. So in my mind, I'm saying, how can I go home and tell her I may not have a job, but she just told me we're about to have a baby.
Mm.
And I'm wrestling through all of this, and I said, you know what? I need out.
Mm-hmm.
So I started drinking heavy. I started buying pills off the streets, Lortabs, Percocet, and then Future decides to come out with this song. At the time, they were like $7 a pill.
Mm-hmm.
They went up to $18 on the street.
Whew.
So I'm literally spending hundreds of dollars a month because I'm popping 3 and 4 a day. There were times when I didn't even know where I was.
Mm.
I'd be driving my son to daycare high,
Yeah.
Wow.
but no one knew around me. I ended up going to therapy, and I remember the therapist saying, you're a high-functioning depressive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if that's the right word, you know.
Yeah, that's it. That describes it.
Yeah,
High
she was like,
functioning.
when I'm on,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
When I'm off though, I would speak to thousands of people, and I go back to my hotel room and I ball up like a baby. I'd be in a fetal position crying, and I was drowning because I didn't deal with the loss of my best friend. I kind of skimmed over it.
Yeah.
Didn't really deal with my grandfather. Angry with him because he told me I'd always be here,
Mm-hmm.
but he died. You know, I said I'll be back next weekend, and he died on a Wednesday. And let me tell you what's funny about that. I was taking a New Testament exam, learning about healing, and my grandfather died of cancer.
Wow. Yeah, that's tough.
How do you process that, right?
That's really
God,
tough.
I'm working with you.
Yeah. And you have to be the one to be strong for other people and
But-
tell them, hey, there's a healing in prayer. And
Yeah,
here
right?
you are struggling, losing someone.
Losing.
That was
Yeah,
sick.
That was sick. And I got to a point where I said enough is enough. And I mean, once my son was born, I tried to bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
But I was angry with the church. I was angry with God. I started started distancing myself from my wife
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I was emotionally unavailable. I was physically there, but I was checked out.
Yeah.
And one day in March, got in my car.
This is 2014?
Nah, this is 2016.
2016.
After
March
I had my
2016.
baby, March 2016. I got in my car
Mm-hmm.
with the plan of killing myself.
Mm-hmm.
Had my 357 on my lap. I was listening to all the music I wanted to. I love coffee. I had my coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I had my plan. I had it planned. I drove to Alpharetta, Georgia, got off at exit 7. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I was going to do it at my therapist's office because I knew people were coming in and out, so they would find me quick.
Mm.
And as I got ready to go, I went to this place once a week. But all of a sudden, it was one day.
Mm-hmm.
When I got off the freeway and got ready to turn where I wanted to go, I kept seeing the color orange, and the whole block was wrapped with a detour sign.
Mm.
I couldn't get through. And you know, I realized then that God had given me another grace. And somebody asked me, they said, you know, but if you wanted to kill yourself, you would have went and did it anyway. I said, no, when you have a plan, when you know exactly how you want it to be,
Mm-hmm.
any disruption stops it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like when I listen to James Shaw talk about the guy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, at the Waffle House.
Yeah.
Once he disrupted the guy could have came back.
Right.
But he ran away. He said, "Why you do this?" I
His
think that
plan
was
was
James.
thwarted.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not, using this as, but I understood when you have a plan and it doesn't go as planned, you stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, though, God had given me a different grace, and it was a grace that made me write this book.
Yeah.
Because I got tired of pretending to be happy. I got tired of showing up to church.
Mm-hmm.
I got tired of smiling. I got tired of pretending that my marriage was good. I got tired of posting on Instagram and saying Merry Christmas, but it wasn't merry.
Mm.
I got tired.
Yeah.
I remember, you know what made me stop taking pills?
What was that?
One day, I was sitting at home in the kitchen. I was crying, and my wife and son walked in, and my son, he was 1, and he said, it's funny, his words were so clear. He said, "Daddy, what's wrong?"
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at him, and I saw as I looked at him, his little infant hand approached my face, and he began to wipe my tears.
Wow.
And he said, "Daddy, don't cry." And I knew then that something had to change. My son he's not supposed to wipe my tears. I'm supposed to wipe his. And that made me say, I have to change. But I didn't recover, though, Eric, fast enough to save my marriage. But I am now, and I can say this, I saved my life. And I wrote this book to tell people about it.
Yeah, man, we're just blessed to have, the huddle, it's all about people's stories.
Yeah.
It really is. We bring people in to tell their stories. And I know our listeners are connecting with you right now, Dacari. You know what I'm saying? I know that they are. No question in my mind. I know that thousands of people see you on a weekly basis. I know this. And to them, it's like, how could it be? How could he be riding down the street with a 357, getting ready to blow his head off, or whatever the plan was? How could he be the person?
Right. His words help me.
Yeah.
He helps me. How can he do this?
Yeah. And I'm thinking that was probably more weight for you to carry.
It was, because you're responsible to pour out.
Yeah.
But who's pouring in?
Right.
I am that boiling pot that's on the stove, waiting for somebody to place a deposit, right? But no one was doing it. Have you ever had a pot of water on a stove and it's heated and you don't put anything in it? Eventually, it starts to scream.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. I was that pot screaming, saying, hey, y'all. I remember saying that. I said this recently. If you paid attention to my Instagram for about a month, I told you. Some of my messages were, fade away. Things will be fine.
Yeah.
I was telling people I was hurt. Black and white photos, right? You go on Instagram right now, you type in the hashtag depression. It's pretty cool. They actually send you to all the different hotlines. If you go into the search bar, but if you go, once you get past that piece, and I think they ask you, are you depressed, et cetera. And once you say no or whatever, you can start seeing all the pictures. Most of the pictures are gloomy and dark.
Wow.
I was in that number.
Yeah.
So listen, we on a time crunch. Can we stay just a few minutes, or do we need to?
No, we good.
We don't have no problem doing another a part two, because this is important stuff here, Dacari, and we don't want to discredit it by trying to be in this time crunch. So if we need to come back, that's totally fine. If we can go on just a few more minutes, that will be good also.
That's fine. Let's go.
So you talked about the suicide ideation, and when we started the show, we said there's a difference between thinking about death and thinking about killing yourself. How did you know that what was it that let you know, okay, I have a problem and I really need to go? Obviously this is after you went to the counseling at Vandy. You're years removed from that.
Yeah.
Like how did you know that I need help?
You know what was funny, and now I'll say this because I did mention I'm no longer married. I know that depression led to my divorce, and my ex-wife told me, you need to go see someone. I remember saying to her, hey, I think I'm depressed. And she said, you need to see someone. So she found counselors, therapists for me. And I just went. For a long time, I didn't know where I was going. I thought maybe, I'm having communication problems in my marriage. You started calling out all these things, and it was really something deeper. It was my communication. I kept telling people who saw, once I started opening up saying, hey, I'm having problems in my marriage, I kept telling them, I'm not fighting for my marriage. I'm fighting for my life. And no one could hear that. I'm like, I can do this marriage thing if I can get me right. It's me that's the problem. Wasn't the institution of marriage.
Right.
But it was her who and I'm going to be honest with you, those that are listening, if you can have people in your space that can just say go, that's all I really needed. And she found, sometimes you need people to just almost drag you there. Even though I didn't want it, once she signed me up and told me what time I had to be there, I just went.
So I'm so glad to hear you say that, because in the field, as therapists, we know that most people, if they are forced to come in any way, they'll show up and they'll just sit there and say, oh, I don't have any problem. Someone told me to come. And for me, I'll kind of go a little bit with that just for a few minutes, but I can tell when a person is not trying to be there. And I'll let them leave. But that doesn't sound like that's what happened with you.
Now, when I went, I think it's also important, and I think you shared this before, and I love your transparency when you talk about every therapist isn't for everybody. You have to find, and I think for me, again, I do attribute this to God too. Having the right person in the room made me speak. This person was different. You know, this therapist was different. Like, this lady was amazing. Mm-hmm. She fought me internally though, with her words. It was, I think it's really cool when you fill out the form to talk about your history and all that. Mm-hmm. When great therapists, they can read between all of that, and they can bring things in. So she didn't hit me with where I was. She started backwards to make me talk about it. Mm-hmm. So what you did was like, let's talk about your childhood versus what's going on now. Yeah. Talking about my childhood was easy. Like, okay, what you want to know? Yeah. What you like? You like sports? And so as I started talking, opening it up, it was like, before I knew it, I had given her everything she needed to work with me. Yeah. You know, and she got me, you know, and I was swooned in. I was like, all right, I guess I'll be back next week.
Yeah. You know? So you went, even though you didn't want to go to therapy, you went along with it. You gave it a shot. Yep. You connected with the therapist in a therapeutic alliance, because that's what we're trying to build in those first few sessions, just an alliance where you can trust us so that you can be vulnerable with us and open up. Yeah. And you found that it was actually helpful for you.
Oh yeah, very, very much so. And I mean, unfortunately, she ended up moving to North Carolina, which put me back in a bad spot. Yeah. She recommended a couple of therapists that they just didn't work out for me. Yeah. And that's what ultimately brought me, I thought my marriage was almost getting stronger, and it didn't. After she left, it was downhill. We found one other guy who was really good, but I was afraid to let him in.
What do you think it was? What was the barrier for you, Dacari?
He was about to uncover some truths that I wasn't ready to deal with. He got there. Yeah. He knocked on that door, and I said, no way. Yeah. He was uncovering me. Oh, wow. Yeah. And I was afraid to look at myself. I said this last night. I was speaking last night, and I said, Socrates, I remember reading about his writing. He said an unexamined life is a life not worth living, right? But then years later, I remember Malcolm X saying, but an examined life is a life. He said an examined life can be painful, right? One is saying, hey, if you don't look at it, it can be, bad thing. But when you look at it, it can be painful. And for me to look at myself, think about it. When you look at your physical self, you get in the mirror one day and say, man, I got a pimple on my face, right? I ain't going out. But imagine looking at your soul. Whew. Imagine staring at your soul and you're seeing the darker parts that nobody else can see. And that.
Were you afraid of that?
Absolutely.
I know I would be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, most of us would be. When you start uncovering and peeling back that onion, you shock yourself. Yeah. You realize, I didn't know I was carrying this. I didn't know that what I experienced at 8 years old was still with me.
Man, listen.
At 28 years old.
Yes.
And it was because you don't unpack it. Yeah. Especially trauma. Trauma doesn't go away.
Right.
It stays with you. We can see it in your brain. We can look at a PET scan of your brain and see that you've been through trauma in your life. And so again, it's really just an honor for you to be here to share with us on this level. This is courageous. This is you being vulnerable and showing your courage, because I believe vulnerability is an accurate measure of one's courage. And I say that in session a lot, because I see people wrestling with, do I want to say this or do I want to hold it? And I tell them, show me how courageous you are. And it just opens up, it just breaks down walls, and people they cry, of course, but they feel so much better because not because they told me something, but because they showed themselves how courageous that they could be. Right. And so I applaud you for doing that. Yeah. And it looks like it saved your life at one point, and it's helping you in your life today. Yeah. Through your book, people read the words on those pages, and they think about you. They're like, wow, this man really went through these things. I'm surprised he would even tell anybody that. Right. When I wrote my first book, I felt naked when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like I was literally naked. People come up to you and say, oh, I didn't know this about you. I'm like, yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you experienced it. This is your second book, right? Yeah. Your first one was more like multimedia.
Yeah, it was on social media.
Yeah. And so, man, this is an episode that I think people need to listen to over and over again. If
Most
anything,
definitely.
is to hear this man's story.
Yeah.
So how did you overcome? That's what people want to know. How did you overcome? And I remember hearing you speak a couple of months ago, and you said something along the lines of, "I'm better, but I'm not healed."
Yeah, it's actually been my slogan. It's true. I'm not healed, but I'm free.
Yeah, there it is. Not healed. Y'all hear that? He's not healed.
I'm not healed.
He's admitted, again, vulnerability. Yeah. People would think, oh, you done wrote the book, you're going around talking about it, but you're not healed.
I'm not healed.
But you're free.
And what that means is healing is a process. Mm-hmm. It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
But free, when I say I'm free to share. Mm-hmm. I feel alive now. I just have to do the work. You know, I was speaking recently with Crystal J. We were talking.
Crystal J?
Yeah,
that's our girl.
Yeah, right there. Her and I, we were eating or drinking coffee, and we both talked. She was talking about my book, and she said, you know, now is this part of your life now, though, is you got to talk about the aftermath, and that is where my healing will really come from. Now that I got it out there, now people got to understand what's next. Divorced and dating, what is that like? Blended family, what is that like? Yeah. My world, I literally walked out of my marriage, y'all, with a coffee table.
That's it.
That's it.
Wow.
You see, how do you bounce back? How do you rebuild your life? I'm in my mother's basement. You see, you're talking about being transparent and vulnerable.
Wow.
I'm rebuilding. What is it like to live again?
Literally from the ground.
From the ground up. Yeah.
Got it out the mud.
Yeah.
So, Dacari, what would you tell someone who is dealing with depression or battling with it? They know that something's not right. What would you say to them?
You know, it's going to sound very cliche, right? But the first thing is, if you feel that you're battling with depression, Google a therapist. Like I cannot say go talk to a pastor, go talk to your homeboy, your homegirl. Yeah. Google a therapist. If you're in college, go to your wellness center immediately. Like, don't be afraid. Let me tell you, when I first went to therapy, when I walked in the clinic or the wellness center, I said, "Oh wow, it's a bunch of y'all in here." It's like I'm high-fiving the whole divinity school. Like, what's up, dog? Hey, you dealing with that too? Hey, you know, it's so many others that are dealing with what you think you're going through alone. And so, I would say, find a therapist. And then another thing, though, I would say now, begin to journal those thoughts and feelings. Like, I literally do this to this day. If I'm having a bad thought or emotion, even if I'm on a freeway, I will pull over and write it down because I don't want to forget it. And I'll go back and read it. And because I ask myself the question, I'll say, why am I feeling sad? Well, this guy just moved me out the road. No, that really wasn't the issue. And I worked through that while I'm on the freeway.
Wow.
Because I want to make sure that whatever just happened then, it doesn't go with me off the exit.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's a real good important one because I even find myself, you know, with myself when I'm sitting there thinking about why am I upset. For example, I know we talked about relationships last week, more so within my marriage. So it's like, okay, why she just make me upset, you know? And she could say something, and I always say it's the way she said it. Is that the way? Is that why I'm mad? Nah, that's not why I'm mad. Maybe it's something else, and it could be something that happened earlier today that I'm still carrying over. And now that she done said this, now I'm really mad.
Right.
You know,
and that's what I
think that's good.
Yeah,
to be able to work through and really find.
I work through it before I even get to my next stop because I don't want to carry that energy.
Yeah.
To where I'm going. Now, sometimes you can't do it all the time because sometimes things happen like I mean, I've had a situation where say all of us are out and I get a phone call. I can't work through that emotion as quickly. We can be like getting ready to go to the game and something just pissed me off. I'm like, I actually just need to debrief. Like I can't. You gonna tell? You all gonna know. What happened? Well, man, this da. And so I worked through it for about 10, 15 minutes. But I journal. So go to a therapist, journal those thoughts.
Yeah.
And because I am a man of faith, I believe prayer does work. I believe that. I believe prayer works. But prayer without works is dead. And prayer works, but prayer without works is dead too, right?
And I'll say this, you know, prayer is useful in therapy for a person who prays.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned this in the past that I pray for my clients in sessions. I'll pray with them.
Wow.
Or I'll pray silently for them. Sometimes I find myself asking God, give me what I need to help this person. Because I don't always know. Most of what we do is just routine. Person comes in with depression, it's just a routine, right? It's just like a surgeon. It's the same thing every time. Mm-hmm. But everybody is a little bit different. And so I sometimes have to ask myself, ask God, what is it that I need to give to this person right now? Use me. And so I'm saying all this because, we as people of color and African descent, we don't always say it, but there's a stigma that, you just pray your issues away.
Yep.
And then on the other side, it's like, well, you need to see a therapist, but they can go hand in hand. They really can. God created counselors too. There's a scripture that says where there's an abundance of counselors, there's safety. There's always been an older person, a sage, somebody in the community that people went to help resolve their issues. So don't discount prayer. Listeners, please, you don't have to discount prayer as a coping mechanism, but you also need to use that as a supplement for professional help. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Some other things that you mentioned, journaling, that's a great way to deal with depression. Write down your thoughts. Like, write down your emotions that you felt that day, whether they're good emotions or negative emotions. Write them down. Another good thing to do is to stick to your normal routine as much as possible, because when you get off your routine, you're repeating the cycle of depression, right? For an example, you wake up, you feel depressed. I'm not going to work today. Now, not going to work today, you lose money. You lost money, now you're depressed because you don't have enough money to pay bills.
Right.
So you're repeating the cycle.
Yeah.
So stick to your normal routine. And I say this all the time when I'm talking about depression. The number one remedy is working out, exercising. Get outside, like literally go outside, and soak in nature. Go for a walk, 20 to 30 minutes, 4 or 5 times a week. Go to a gym, do squats in your room, do push-ups, do anything you can, because that exercise is creating endorphins, which is the feeling of well-being. You're gonna feel better. The other morning, I only really have time to work out like at 5 a.m. I did not feel like getting out of my bed. I was just kind of in a slump. It's getting cold. I wanted to stay in the bed a little longer.
Right.
I got up and went to the gym for 5 minutes. I did 3 sets of one exercise. I'm like, that's it. I'm out of here. But I feel great because I got up and went and did what I would normally do. Had a great day. So if you're feeling depressed, get up, stick to your routine, get some exercise, eat well, take care of yourself, challenge your thoughts, write down your feelings for that day. Right. Keep a journal. Yeah. Think about the things that you're grateful for. Any one of these things will help you combat a depressed mood. So listen, we're running out of time, man. I know we got to get out of here, but what is one final word? We always give our guests an opportunity to share one final thing with our listeners. What would that be from you today, Dacari?
I think that we just did a series at the church last night. We talked about removing the mask. You have to acknowledge that you're battling something or something's wrong. Right, you have to take that mask off.
Yeah.
And I would say to the listener, you would never fully become what you want until you stop pretending to be something you're not. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
And say it again. Say it again for the ones in the back.
You won't ever fully become what you want until you stop pretending to be something you're not. Mm-hmm. You can't do it. Take your mask off. Yeah. Take it off.
Say mask off.
Mask off.
Come on, let them know.
Yeah. Take it off.
Wow. So we're gonna end there. How about that?
Oh yeah. Real quick, let everybody know where they can get your brand new book, The Depressed Millennial.
The Depressed Millennial can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Books A Million, a couple of places where books are sold. They just keep yes, people keep telling me it was in this space. So I'm excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah, man. What about you, Dez? You got some final words for the listeners today?
Man, look, and I love how you just love to put me on the spot with the final word of the day. Golly, what is my final word?
Maybe you don't have to have one. How about you don't have to have one?
I would say, because I think I had somebody to text me recently. They checked in on me. Make sure you spread love to the ones that you're close to. Check in on them people.
Yeah.
Tell your close and loved ones and your friends, family that you love them.
Yeah.
Had somebody do that to me today.
Let's challenge the listeners. Let's challenge the listeners
There you go.
to call 3 people today.
Tell them that you love them.
Just to check in on them.
Yeah.
Can you do that? And if you do that, hit us up and let us know. Hit us up. Let us know that you reached out to some people. Like you guys always do, we love your feedback. Send it in. Let us know how the show is helping you. My final word for you, I'm going to echo something that Dacari said. Find a therapist. He mentioned Google. You can Google. You can go to psychologytoday.com, which is like a Facebook for counselors and therapists. You know, you'll find me on there. And the way that I coach people to use it, pick out about 3 people that specialize in what you're dealing with. Call them. Interview them. Say, hey, I'm struggling with this. How would you help me with this? You know, whatever they say, you know, you pick one. You can go see all 3 of them. The thing is, get with someone that you feel good, like a good connection with. Because every counselor is not for every person. It's important. It is important, and we know this as therapists, that you usually want to see somebody that looks like you also.
Yeah.
So be sure to do that. If you're struggling, no need to suffer in silence, because there's plenty of people out here in this world who are prepared, capable, and ready to help you live your best life. Let's end it there, man. As always, you can subscribe to the show by texting TMHP to 31996. That's TMHP to 31996, and you will be subscribed to our show, and we'll send it to your phone every Monday morning at 6 a.m. Hey, I want to give a shout-out to one of our listeners. Her name is Leslie Joy.
Okay.
No, Leslie Alexander. She is a great listener. She's always telling me about every show. She's like, I will listen to this show, and I know she's going to hit me up about today's show also. And so big shout out to you for being one of our best listeners out there. Hey, that's going to be it. Make it a great day, folks.
Thanks for listening to the Morning Huddle Podcast. For more information about this episode, please visit www.themorninghuddlepodcast.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Eric_the_counselor. All information set forth in the Morning Huddle Podcast and on themorninghuddlepodcast.com is not professional mental health care or medical care. Information expressed is provided for educational and informational purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind.